Okay, we're just going to jump right in. I was going to use a colour palette from Sarah Renee Clark's Colour Cube, but then I found one on Pinterest and I absolutely fell in love with it. So this is the colour cube that I'm going to be using. I'm going to be using green, blue, purple, pink and orange, and they make a beautiful colour combination. I pretty much took out every supply I have in this color palette, and my goal was to see how many pages I could create with these colors. But I also had to keep in mind how long the video was going to go for. So I didn't manage to use all the supplies, but I tried to keep it down to the supplies that I did use as best as I could. But as you can see, I'm using my acrylic markers, my Neo 2 color crayons. I'm also adding water just to see what kind of effect I can get from them. I have the Karin Markers, which I haven't had a chance to use. And if any of you have seen my other video, which I made a video a few months ago on all the supplies I have used, or all the supplies I have and have not used, I should say, these markers are one of them. So I am so super happy that I'm able to actually use them this time. I'm also bringing out my watercolors, my trusty watercolors that I always have on hand, and I'm using a mix of Prima Tropical watercolors, Daniel Smith and Van Gogh watercolors. I've also brought out my acrylic ink my acrylic inks, and I love acrylic inks. I love the vibrancy of them, but I also love the fact that they can swirl and move like watercolor. So this is the color palette I have chosen for today. So let's just jump right in with the first page. So from my intro, I mentioned that I wanted to create a video that not only used a limited color palette, but also wanted to see how many pages I could create with it. I was so excited and pumped for this that I thought this was a great idea. Then all of a sudden, dread hit. I had no idea what I wanted to do. The weather in Melbourne was rainy and grey, and it felt like my creative spark or inspiration was just not happening. I think it took me about a month to actually come up with the different ideas for this sketchbook video, because I just was not feeling it. So I thought I would turn this video into inspiration for when you've lost inspiration. So the first thing I did was to go back over the things I have made, and I found a page where I made watercolor strokes in rainbow order. I decided I would do that again and mix the colors to see what I would get. So I guess my first tip is, if you are lacking or struggling with inspiration, go back over your sketchbook and see what you have previously done, because there might be something there that you can either recreate, or you might just want to do it with using the different colors or the same colors, but you just want to get those creative juices flowing again. I started off by taping my edges for a clean border, and I drew wavy lines with a grey lead pencil, and following the wavy lines as a guide, I painted my strokes or my lines in watercolor, mixing the colors 3 times before moving on to the next color. I did this until I got to the end of the page. This is a great way to warm up and can be done in any color palette, whether it's a limited color or not limited color palette, and can be done with any medium: watercolor, inks, paint pens, crayons, pencils, or anything that can make lines. You could even use 3D paste. The point is to just get in there and create. Once everything was dry and I knew I wanted to do something different than what I did before, so I followed my gut and went with it. I took a black pen and I drew a border, and then I drew wavy lines where the grey lead lines were. In those wavy lines there were gaps, and I coloured that in with the black pen. But that wasn't enough. I wanted something else. Looking back, I could have left it the way it was, but I was following my creative energy. So I started to colour in the border with the black marker, covering as much white border as I could. It still didn't feel right, so I took my white gel pen and I started doodling on the border. I don't know about you, but once I started doing that, I felt like I was scratching an itch that I couldn't reach before. I just kept going until I was done and finished with the border. And I was happy. Was it wonderful? Yes, because I was able to do something that I created before, but turn it into something slightly different. And that was what made me happy. Starting on the next page, you think I would know what to do after the first one, but I was still struggling. I think it took me about a week to even feel like being creative, and I still didn't know what I wanted to do. So, what's something else that you've done that is easy? Neurographic lines for me is easy, and it's something that can be done anytime. I can tell you that when I was doing this page, I was not happy with it at all because I wanted to create something grandeur and amazing and spectacular, but my energy was just not having it. And I was close to not sharing this page because I thought that it wasn't great. But I rethought that and I thought it's a great example at showing that even though you think your art isn't amazing, it is, because in some way it has helped you and has also helped someone else. So keep creating. Looking back on this page, I feel differently. I thought it was ugly and I didn't think anything of it because it's not grandeur or spectacular. But now I like it. Perhaps it's because my mood has changed, and being editor Alison, and I see things differently than when I was making this page, I see it differently now. I love the simplicity of the neurographic lines with the pop of bright colours. I love the different combinations of using my acrylic markers with my jelly roll pens. And what I thought was ugly at the time isn't so ugly at all. Neurographic lines are supposed to help calm the mind. My mind was calm, but I just wasn't inspired. And I felt like I was just going through the motions of creating, not really creating, like I said, just going through the motions of it. I can't tell you enough how hard making this video has been. And you would think that it would be easy with just a limited color palette, and I do believe it is, but how I feel now is different to how I felt back then. Back then, I was not in a great place and I was really trying to find my creative mojo, really trying to find what makes my creative energy sing, but I couldn't. I actually had to Google how to fix creative blocks, and this is what I found. Experiment with different medium, focus on quantity over quality, which I thought was strange, use prompts and revisit past work. So I guess I'm actually doing 2 out of the 4 suggestions. Moving on to number 3. I really wanted to use the Karin Markers for something, but I wasn't sure what. I have seen a lot of flower drawings and paintings around, so I thought I would try and use them with the Karin Markers and do something along those lines. And because they are water soluble, I can make them wispy and magical and look all fairy-like. It's so strange looking back at this page through editing eyes because I didn't think much of it at the time. But as I watch and edit, I love how the flowers are wispy at the ends. I'm not much of a flower drawer. I love flowers, but I don't think they're my jam. That wasn't until I started drawing them in my grid journal in a previous video, and I really enjoyed that. The roses I drew in that video somehow just seemed to finish the pieces off for me. So I thought I would try it again here. I used all the colours for the flowers, including the green, because why not? I've been having a fascination with green these days. It's not my usual colour that I gravitate towards. My usual colours are usually turquoise, pink, or orange. Love orange, especially orange and turquoise together. But at the moment, I'm loving green. Maybe it's because it's spring here in Melbourne, or maybe it's because something else I haven't discovered yet. But for the moment, green is the colour. I paint my flowers one by one and take my paintbrush to water down the ends of the petals. I try and make sure the flower is dry before painting another one, especially orange and blue. Don't want to make or create mud. I keep going until my page is full of brightly coloured flowers. It's actually looking very tropical and I love tropical flowers. My favourite is the frangipani flower. I just love the scent of that flower and I know when I see it I'm somewhere warm and beautiful. Once the page is full, I take out my black brush tip pen and I start to draw loose freehand outlines of the flowers. Not really caring about precision because the flowers are pretty much watercolor flowers now. And I love the brush tip pen for this reason because you get different strokes and lines and different widths. I think it finished off the page nicely. For number 4, I was still struggling for ideas, so I thought I would use the masking fluid that I have. I love masking fluid and I find it so satisfying rubbing off the rubber when I'm finished with a piece. Keep in mind, masking fluid does have latex, so if you do have an allergy, I think there are masking fluids out there without latex. But like I said, I was struggling again to find inspiration. So I didn't want to do squares, which is what I have done in the past with the masking fluid. And then I remembered the image from the color palette that I used. It had leafy vines with gradiating colors of the color palette. So I used that as my inspiration. I laid out what looked like vines with my masking fluid very loosely, and I mean very loosely, because I'm not going for perfection. I just want something that represented the inspiration. Please note that you do have to wait for masking fluid to dry before painting over it. Because if you don't, you're going to get masking fluid all up in your brushes and ruin them. If you do want to use masking fluid with a brush, then I suggest to dedicate one brush for this. Otherwise you will ruin all your really good brushes. But once it was dry, I painted over it with watercolor in the color gradient of the color palette, starting with orange and finish with green. I didn't like the orange that I used first because it looked very yellow. So I used a different orange for the second layer and it looked so much better. Like I said, I did do 2 layers of watercolor and waited for that to dry. I had to leave it overnight because I was just about to have dinner. So didn't want to interrupt my dinner. Once the watercolor was dry, it was time to peel the masking fluid. I won't bore you with watching me peel all the masking fluid off. Just for me, it is the best thing ever. Now what was left was white spaces of the page showing through. And you can leave it here, but I wanted something different. I grabbed my fountain pen and I outlined the vines and leaves and I did some doodles with it just to give some contrast. And I don't know if it's too much contrast or if it's too busy, but that's okay because we're just playing in our sketchbook. Moving on to number 5. I was starting to get ideas, which was good because I think by the time I got to number 5, I think it had already been a month since I did number 1. But like I said, I was struggling with this video to begin with. But I had an idea. I had done something similar to what I'm about to show you in another art journal I have. For this page, I'm using Neurographic 2 crayons and just colouring in the whole page with the pink, orange, purple, blue and green. I started doing it in the order of the colour combination, but then I changed it up and just moved around. Once I had finished, I used gesso to paint over them, and this is where the coolest thing happens. Because Neurographic 2s are water soluble or move when touched by a liquid, using gesso moved and blended the colours and also made them more pastel. This is a great way to add something to your backgrounds without taking too much from the foreground. Just look at how that background came. I absolutely love this technique. Then I had to wait for it to dry. But before doing so, I used the back of my paintbrush and made 3 circles that could look like roses. I was getting inspiration from seeing abstract roses everywhere, so I thought I would go with the flow. When the gesso had dried, I tried to do some mark making with coloured pencils, but for some reason the coloured pencils just were not showing up on the page. But I continued anyway. I pulled out my acrylic inks, and I love my acrylic inks. I love the intensity of the colour. I love that they can be watered down to look like watercolour, and I just absolutely love the movement. And once dried, they do not move, and I absolutely love them. I need to start using these acrylic inks more in other pages just to test them out and see what I can do. In this page, I'm using Daler-Rowney inks in Flame Orange, Purple Lake, Prussian Blue, and this Prussian Blue is to die for, and Light Green. And for the magenta, I'm using Liquitex. I wanted each rose to be different colour and using the green for the leaves. I also used a 2-colour combo with the roses to give more dimension. I used white with blue, and I also used purple and magenta together, and also the magenta with the orange. They are not perfect, but I like them. When I used the green for the leaves, I did notice that the green was a bit too light for the foreground, and it seemed to blend in with the background. So I brought out an acrylic marker in dark green to help bring out the leaves. And to incorporate some more of that dark green acrylic marker, I did some mark making in the background. So you think I would have stopped there, and looking back, I probably should have. But instead, I decided to add more colour with more mark making in the colour combo, and then to top that off, I added stems for the roses, which isn't such a bad thing to add stems to the roses, but I think I overworked the page. It probably would have worked better if I didn't actually do the marks in the color combos, because I already had that colorful, beautiful background, and I feel like I have taken away from that beautiful background. But as this is just a journal piece, you know, it's something to learn from. So always remember that sometimes you don't always create something that you love, but you learn from it. In this page, the best part for me was the Neurographic 2 pastels in the background, or the Neurographic 2 crayons in the background with the gesso over it, and the roses in the acrylic ink. I absolutely love that, and that will probably be a better result than trying to overwork it. But again, like I said, you don't always win every journal page that you're trying to create. And this brings us to the last page of the video, number 6. I've seen a lot of paintings using a catalyst and a lot of paintings using a squeegee. And I wonder what would happen if I used acrylic inks, because it's acrylic and it has a lot of movement in them. This page is amazing and turned out so simple and so easy. All I did was lay down acrylic ink on the page and I swiped it with my catalyst. Now you don't have to use a catalyst, you can use any old card that you can find and or any swiping tool like a squeegee. And I just followed the color inspiration that I used. Really simple and fun. I think I did this one in about 5 to 10 minutes and the colors just take you to another place. You can swipe in any direction you choose. You can follow the line or you can swipe across and the colors are fun and vibrant. So simple. I have to say, I think this rainbow swipe is my favorite out of all of them, but I'll be interested to hear what you have to think, which is your favorite. Now with that done, let's look at what we created today. We did the colorful swipes, abstract roses, watercolor vines using the inspiration image, dreamy flowers, and neurographic lines, which now looking back on it looks very futuristic and space age, and our old rainbow lines. Thank you so much for watching and I hope you found some inspiration. Until next time, bye!